Thank you, Carolyn, and thank you, everybody. My name is Lou Zeller, and I'm Executive Director with the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League. The league was founded in 1984 to protect the homes and the families and the livelihoods of people in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And we quickly expanded out because the issue we were facing was indeed a national issue. But what I want to talk about here tonight, principally, is a different issue, not a waste dump, which is the reason Blue Ridge was founded all those years ago. But it's about natural gas pipelines, and you know that well. How many people in the room here are from Franklin County? Show of hands. Most everybody. How many people have been to a meeting about the pipeline? Most everyone. How many people are in favor of a pipeline coming through Franklin County? That got a different result. How many are opposed to a pipeline coming through Franklin County? Jeepers, even the cheap seats way in the back of the peanut gallery operating the audiovisual, I heard from them. Well, what can we do to stop it? Because if there's nothing else I can say to you tonight, here it is. This can be stopped. How we do it and what we do to stop it is still to be determined. I don't have a crystal ball. I didn't have a crystal ball when I joined Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League in 1986. Yes, I've been with them that long, working on campaigns, traveling tens of thousands of miles a year, working in communities just like this one. The only thing that has ever worked for us over those years, that has worked the best, is organized groups of people in communities. At this point, as far south as Valdosta, Georgia, as far north as Louisa and Charlottesville, Virginia, far west as Scottsboro, Alabama. And we didn't know when we started what would turn the trick. In fact, only in hindsight can you determine, well, this was a turning point. At this point when we disrupted the county's meeting, or at this point when we released the revelations in this report, or that we showed up with a large number of people out in front of the governor's mansion from all over the state, or when we went to a television station and upended the whole program from the audience, from a state meeting that was being held in the public TV station in North Carolina. We didn't know what the turning points were when we were taking on a chicken manure burning company. Chicken manure for the purpose of generating electric power. How many people have heard of that? You're fortunate. Some people have. It was here in Virginia too. They tried to build burning chicken manure to generate electric power. It's as cracked an idea as I've ever heard. But we didn't know the turning point would be at that point in that campaign. But there are no chicken. But we stopped the company. The company left the state. So what we did in every case was to do the things, working with residents, working with people who are concerned like yourselves, and do the things that advanced our goals. That is the essence of a strategic plan. There were things that we held back from because they sounded like good ideas, but they didn't get us to the goal. And I can't give you a list of what those things are, because each campaign, it's like a person. It has its own personality, has its own period of growth and development. And like I said, I have no crystal ball. But in stepwise fashion, doing the first thing that you can do, enabling you to do the next thing, and ultimately getting to the things that right now seem impossible. Getting your county government to take a stand against something. It's happened in some boards of supervisors, or it is happening, or it looks like it's happening, let's put it that way. But I take it it's not happening in Franklin County yet. No dissenting votes on that one. Although I do know you have some very good people on that board. Those are not our opponents. The surveyors are not our opponents in that case. The opponents' headquarters are much, much further away. Let's talk about pipelines and just get a grounding in that a little bit. Safeguarding America's resources, the resources I'm talking about are not gas and coal and nuclear and anything else like that. It's our people. It's our water, it's our land, it's our air, and it's our lives. So let's start with land. The threats from a natural gas pipeline are decreased property values, inability to sell, inability to get a mortgage, to refinance, restricting the use of your own property if you elect to stay there, poor compensation. What we see over and over again is promises made, signing on the dotted line from the willing property owner, and then turning it over to the oil and gas company. And very much you take what they give you after they have deducted their expenses, their overhead, their insurance, and whatever else they can think of to deduct before they give it to you. This is the situation with gas pipelines. This is the situation with fracking, where there are other factors involved. The permission to even allow somebody to take gas from under your land can happen without your permission in that case. Construction hassles. 150-foot wide right-of-way, for some people that would take all their property. And not being able to build anything on top of the pipeline, if it were to be built, even though it's underground, you've lost the use of your property. We'll talk about compensation here in a little bit, and actually your the valuation in just a moment. But you continue to pay taxes on that land. It's still your land. Let's talk about one of those examples. And this comes from a Forensic Appraisal Group Limited, which is their business to do condemnations and property appraisals. So the question, if you can, it's kind of small, I'll read it to you. How much does a natural gas transmission pipeline affect my fear risk and property valuation? And so the Forensic Appraisal Group says the effect of pipeline easement is measured by the market. Depending on the size of the pipeline, the size of the easement, how it's located on the property, the size of the property, etc., the impact range could be nominal to substantial. To put this in numbers, it could be as little as 50% of the easement land value on the low end, or upwards to 30% or more of the whole property value. I'll read that again. It could be as little as 50% of the easement land value, or up to 30% or more of the whole property value. The more intrusive the easement on the land, diagonal, property line, etc., the more impact it will have. That is how the business of appraisal looks at the situation. So basically, you can your property would be far less valuable than it was. Who would buy land which has a pipeline under it in this room? Anybody? We're conducting a series of plebiscites here tonight. It tells me a lot that people have thought about this some. Because they will come promising money to some. Environmental factors. Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, after all, is an environmental group. Methane gas leaks in the groundwater and streams. There are potentials for explosions. The one that happened in San Bruno, California a few years back ripped a hole 40 feet deep, 4 stories deep, and 160 feet long. It was a crater which was left behind there. Later on, it was deemed that it was the fault of the company because they're basically self-regulated, which is the same situation you have here. Obviously, the disruption of streams and riverbeds that it would cross. Irreparable damage in some cases. How do you put a pipeline that's this big around underneath the creek without ruining that creek? Toxic air pollution from compressor stations is a factor which is not recognized as much as the pipeline and the water contamination, but it is real. And it is a factor which happens, the pollution which happens regardless of whether there are any accidents or not. Pipeline pollution is transporting natural gas, requires pressure to keep the gas moving. One more slide, please. Pipeline pollution 24/7 is right. The gas doesn't move by itself through this pipeline. It needs to be pushed over hill and over dale. So every 50 miles or so is a compressor station. Compressor stations are powered by natural gas. They burn natural gas, internal combustion engines. They may be a turbine, it could be a piston engine. In either case, they're internal combustion engines. They put out phenomenal amounts of pollution every single day. They don't have pollution controls on these devices. They just have a great big tailpipe. For example, 4,000 horsepower gas-powered reciprocating engines is one that we looked at and filed a Clean Air Act petition against late last year. And we're still waiting to hear back from the EPA on that. But the pollution kind of stunned me when I found out what the totals were, which are allowed in the permit. Let's look at those figures. The compressed station emissions is the next slide. That one's kind of small too, so I will read this. Compressor station, and this stuff is on our website. You can find a lot of it there, or in our newsletter. Emissions in pounds from a single one compressor station can amount to 25,000 pounds of fine particulates, 1,400 pounds of sulfur dioxide, which leads to acid rain, 360,000 pounds per year of nitrogen oxides, which leads to ozone pollution, ground level pollution, 70,000 pounds of volatile organic compounds, which is a host of compounds, many of which are toxic, some of which are carcinogenic, such as benzene. Carbon monoxide, 44,000 pounds. Carbon dioxide, this one really floored me when I first looked at it, because I couldn't believe the decimal point was in the right place, but it is true. Nearly 500,000 pounds per year of carbon dioxide is emitted from one single compressor station. 407 million pounds, which is over 200,000 tons of this material is emitted, and this is when the plant is operating right. Hazardous air pollutants are a special category, 25,000 pounds. One in particular, which is common when you burn natural gas, either in a power plant, gas turbine generating electricity, or a compressor station just pushing the gas down the line. came to 17,000 pounds per year of formaldehyde. Formaldehyde is a carcinogen, and it's toxic in small amounts, cause if nothing more than eye irritation or asthma, or even more consequences depending on it. And of course the wind blows in one direction or another, and so you can't get downstream of it, or upstream of it I should say. It is going to be in the atmosphere and it'll be ubiquitous. Compressor station emissions. I mentioned formaldehyde. There's also benzene, a non-human carcinogen. That's part of those volatile organic compounds. Ethylbenzene, another one, toluene, xylene, hydrogen disulfide, which is that rotten egg smelling gas, methane, of course, and other pollutants. This is coming from the smokestack. In addition to that, you have fugitive emissions, other emissions into the air, unplanned emissions caused by flaring, or what they call fugitive emissions, just through cracks and vents in the machine and accidental releases. So we're talking about something which is supposed to be a clean energy source, but just pain. If this is a substitute for coal, then, and I'm not advocating for coal, but remember that natural gas comes from a variety of sources. There is fracking, which people have heard about, I'm sure, and it's an expanding source of natural gas. You have traditional natural gas wells, and you have coal bed methane, which is natural gas, which has been extracted from the ground in the coal mining territory of Western Virginia, along the West Virginia line and in West Virginia itself, where the coal mines closed down. They still are sucking out a lot of the gas. So the natural gas comes from a variety of sources. Accidents. This is from the Des Moines Register. In the past decade, pipeline accidents resulted in $20 million in property damage, spilling a total of 10,712 gross barrels of hazardous liquids onto Iowa property, according to the Federal Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. That's the federal agency that is in charge of safety. 10,000 barrels, not 10,000 pounds, 10,000 barrels full of poison liquid in a decade. Dirty energy. A recent study in the Barnett Shale region of Texas revealed that air pollution emissions from natural gas production were greater than that emitted from all on-road vehicles, cars and trucks, that is, every vehicle you see on the highway, in Dallas-Fort Worth metropolitan area, an area with a population of 6.5 million people. So all the trucks and trailers and motorcycles and everything driven by people in the Dallas metro area, 6 million people, was no more than the pollution coming from the fracking which is going on in the Barnett Shale of Texas. Is this a clean energy source? How can this be considered clean? How can this be an alternative? And why would we sacrifice our communities for something as dirty as this? Can anybody answer that question? I can't either. And I think the answer is a big fat no, ain't gonna happen here. Trespass law. This is what brought us here tonight. Well, it didn't bring us here tonight because this meeting has been set for some time. We just happened to be riding the crest of the news, which, of course, many of you heard the press conference out front, and we know that some of the news media covered it from afar because we were in touch with them earlier today. So you may see something in the Roanoke Times, you may see something in the local paper, you may see something elsewhere on the internet and on other news sources. But what has happened on Ian and Carol and Riley's farm is an invasion. And as I said during the press conference, it is common practice for surveyors to, is to enter a parcel of land without consent of the owner. They do this. Foundation for this right is lacking in the common law. What does that mean? Well, there are two basic forms of law. There are statutes, which are passed by the legislature, in Virginia by the Congress in Washington. Those are the statutes, and other nations have their own lawmaking bodies too. Those are the laws that are written on the book. You can go read them. They're on the shelf somewhere, and you can read chapter and verse all you want. Common law is a different story. Common law, there is no right in the Constitution, for example, to own property. Anybody know what the Constitution Amendment is, which allows you to buy a home? That ain't in there. Common law goes back centuries, just like trespass law does. Allows people to do the things that we all take for granted that are legal. And they are legal because when you get into a court of law and you start arguing back and forth, there's two basic arguments. One is the arguments based on the statute. What does the statute say? The statute says thus and so. You may do this, you shall do this, you may not do that. It will cost you this much. Spelled out. The common law is done by analogy, and that's why we see, that's what's frustrating to many people that don't know the law, is that the law changes over time, which is both an advantage and sometimes a disadvantage. But trespass law is where we find is what we find in the common law. You may not trespass private property. From every and from this is from these are two legal experts here that I have pulled quotes from, and the second quote is from every direct entry upon the soil of another. That is somebody walking onto your land. The law infers some damage. It assumes some damage. If nothing more, the treading down of grass or herbs. So you may have the most careful trespasser on the planet, and they are still invading, and there are still damages assumed under common law. Now, whether you can get compensation for that, how bad the trespass is, some surveyors will come in and cut trees down, they will. And that's a little more obvious, I guess, to assess damage. But if they're simply walking across your property, is that a legal strategy you want to pursue? Well, I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not here to advise anybody on that. But the reason that we are broadcasting the news, holding a press conference and issuing a press release about this is because this is just the tip of the iceberg. What the Rileys saw on their land. That blue tape hanging by Chills Creek. You get a close-up of it. Is what's going on. There are others who are being subjected to this kind of invasion. We want to work with you. We want to work with them that are not in the room who feel that this is wrong. And as I said out in the press conference, I'm not sure there is a legal remedy. I'm not advising people get attorneys and try to sue the surveyors, because just between you and me and the fence post, I think that may end up costing more than it's worth. But it's wrong. A good friend of mine who is an attorney said that people sometimes look to the law for the wrong reasons. This is from an attorney, a good attorney, a bare-knuckled attorney who's worked with many citizens groups on problems, environmental problems, and contamination. It says people look to the law for the wrong reasons. Just because something is wrong or unfair does not mean that it's illegal. Therefore, seeking justice through the courts is a pipe dream. Now, Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League makes use of attorneys. We do it through a variety of means, and we do it in a way which advances the campaign to stop a nuclear dump or to stop some other kind of toxic facility to get a waste dump cleaned up. There are ways that the law can be very helpful. It buys you, bringing a lawsuit, it can buy you publicity, it can buy you information, because there is a procedure to follow. So you become a party to a lawsuit. And so, for example, we intervened in Nuclear Regulatory Commission licenses for nuclear power plants. We've intervened in like half a dozen of them over the years because our nemesis from the beginning has been nuclear waste. So bringing a lawsuit as an organization sometimes can be very helpful, because if that organization is plays its cards right, it can buy some time, it can buy some information, it can buy some profile, it can buy some credibility, you can get something. Notice I did not say you can win, because ultimately many of those licenses, many of those permits are ultimately issued. But in the back and forth, in the interplay of the campaign, a strategic campaign dedicated to stopping a waste dump or stopping a pipeline, the other side is responding. It is slowing down the process, maybe through the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission or from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, the permitting agencies in this case. Permitting agencies, you have to, in order to build a power plant, you have to have a permit from the state, an air permit, a water permit. And in the case of interstate pipelines, you have to get a certificate of convenience and public necessity from the agency in charge, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, abbreviated FERC sometimes. So that those are procedures, those are opportunities for action that I think provides some of the tactics and strategies that we can employ in our campaigns. When you have that information and you're able to use it, and that and other information as well. For example, let's find out about where all of this blue tape has been hung. Next slide, please. You can see that that information getting out to as many people can sway public opinion. So the highest court in the land, in terms of what we want to do, is the court of public opinion. That is what has stopped many toxic waste dumps, has stopped many polluting smokestacks over the years. In the case of one of the first ones I was involved with was an incinerator, a hazardous waste incinerator, which an EPA sanctioned would have burned hazardous waste from a variety of sources, 100,000 tons per year. This campaign took about 7 years, and it involved 5 states. And they were looking for a place to locate this incinerator, this massive contamination source where they would have brought all this waste in from all these different places, put it in the incinerator, burned it, and pretended that it went away. What they didn't say was there's a huge amount of pollution from burning of that toxic material, and it simply changes its form from a liquid into a gas. And that burning it sometimes even creates new compounds which weren't in the original mixture. So I could talk to you about that for a great deal of time, but suffice it to say, it was not what it was cracked up to be. And the private company which was behind it, which is a German company at that time named Thermalchem, already operated a toxic hazardous waste incinerator already in the United States, in fact in South Carolina. All the time that we were working in communities, we ultimately worked in 22 different communities to stop the hazardous waste incinerator. This was in the 90s. And we went from place to place. We went to each community. We went to Northampton County, we went to Ottawa County, we went to every county in between there, Granville County, one at a time, organizing people like yourselves who were concerned about it. And in those cases, the county had provided acceptance or zoning or whatever kind of approval that they were asked to give, or maybe just maybe just the county's blessing or whatever it was. But community after community, we organized on the back of that and said, and changed public opinion and said, no, this is not good enough. And pressure was brought to bear on those county governments. Ultimately, after a period of years, the company, of course, meanwhile, we're spending what we're spending, which is like next to nothing on a campaign. Our side, we got volunteers. I mean, what's the salary level in the Preserve Franklin group, Carolyn? It'd be goose egg. Meanwhile, Thermocam and its attorneys, they got Womble Carlyle, the biggest law firm in the region, and others, and those people make $500 an hour, $1,000 an hour. Consultants make that kind of money. They're bleeding money during that whole period of time. Long story short, on that one was ultimately Thermocam in 1994 withdrew their application and they left North Carolina. Pretty good. It got better. So not only did, and part of one of the campaign slogans that was a turning point in that campaign, because they were looking at, for example, a community outside of Statesville, North Carolina, which is in Ottawa County, and they were looking at another site further to the east, over towards Roxborough, and actually it was Granville County, right next to Roxborough. And they were kind of playing one against the other, saying, well, where's it going to go? We were looking at both of these places. They held hearings and whatnot, and during that period of time. And there was the state held hearings and tried to divide and conquer. But people, we worked with people in Statesville, we worked with people in Granville. And the unifying theme at that time, first time we used it, was not here, not there, not anywhere. They started raising money together. They had a unified fundraising event, which checked what the Governor's Waste Management Board, in that case, North Carolina, the agency pushing it, had promoted, saying that, well, if it doesn't go to Statesville, it'll go to Granville. If it doesn't go to Granville, or some other place. So we didn't fall trap to that. It built more people against the incinerator. Ultimately, it came to Woodland in Northampton County, which is just south of the state line with Virginia. Woodland, a town of 700 people. Some people got arrested at the first hearing that was held in Woodland. And in Woodland, with 700 people, it was neighbor to neighbor, believe me. So there was another public hearing scheduled, and people were worried, well, what'll happen? We got arrested last time, we don't want to be arrested. Because the day after the public hearing was election day, and there were candidates on the ballot in Woodland, North Carolina, which is supposed to get this hazardous waste incinerator, which were against the incinerator. They called themselves the Clean Slate. So if people got arrested, they would have missed election day. So we put together a revival. I thought you'd like this. People got a tent. We had a big tent. And had music and had hot dogs and everything, and it was about 100 yards from the National Guard Armory, where the actual hearing was being held, the state's hearing. And everybody stayed away from the hearing. We boycotted the hearing, essentially. So we had music, we had speeches, we had things for the kids. It was people from all ages, from this age, to my age and older, involved in that outdoor event. And it was a victory rally. No one got arrested at the hearing. It was held the same day as the hearing was going to be, of course. At the time, I couldn't help it. I had to go see what was going on in that National Guard Armory where the hearing was being held. And I did. I slipped over there during the festivities, and I looked in the door and I walked inside. And National Guard Armory, you know what they look like. They were pretty industrial strength buildings. And the walls were lined the state troopers, North Carolina State Troopers, SBI, there was a couple of people sitting up front conducting the hearing, and the room was empty. It was like a tomb. It was like a mausoleum more than anything else. And it was quiet as the tomb. And they had a microphone set up, and every once in a while there was somebody from the industry get up and talk, or somebody from the county that hadn't got the word yet was speaking. And so that was one of those turning points where the state and the Government Waste Management Board and the company, for that matter, saw that people were organized. They weren't going to sit still, and they weren't going to play by the rules either. They weren't going to show up at the public hearing and make their comments and then go home. Although we do that, we have to do that. But if that's all we do, if that's all we had done that. We had been to hearings, we had been to hearings, and we had been to hearings. We'd had as much fun at a hearing as you can possibly have. If we had only done the hearings, we would not have won. Because it takes more than that. To excite the imagination, to capture the momentum, it takes more than simply doing the things which are expected. Sports analogy. If you only play defense, can you win? Duke didn't do it that way, did they? You got to play offense. So that rally was an offensive move. There are many other examples of that over the years, and things which were peaceful, well considered, well timed, and widely supported. Things which we couldn't have pulled off that big tent rally the first week we started organizing. That took some time. But the citizens group there, the Northampton Citizens Against Pollution, which was the last ditch effort of that hazardous waste incinerator, had mapped out a 5-year campaign when we first went there. And the victory happened in 3 years. And after the campaign was over, and after all of the dust had settled and the company had left the state, then people were left a little bit bereft. They got so used to working together. They had a storefront office. They'd made new friends in this community, which they hadn't known before, and they were felt kind of let down. One woman described it like a postpartum depression, which I don't claim to understand, but she knew what she meant. I said there was some more good news. Well, okay, Thermochem went away. They pulled up stakes, they left down, and they withdrew their application. It was a clean victory. Well, over the next period of years, their incinerator in South Carolina, which they had already run and operated for several years, started to see a decline in the amount of hazardous waste coming in. The stuff was getting expensive because they didn't have another cheap place to burn it in North Carolina. It was getting more and more expensive. The market dictated that situation. So the stuff was getting more expensive to burn, and so what did the bean counters at the industries that were producing it do? If you've got something which is more expensive and getting more expensive, what are your options?
Burn something else.
Try something else. Make less of it. Do without it. Reduce your costs. That's what they did. 22% drop in the amount of hazardous waste produced in 2 years after that. And ultimately, the South Carolina incinerator shut down. Now, it didn't happen overnight. It wasn't easy. I'm not predicting that for here. But that's the kind of campaign that can win. And I don't know anything else that it can. And win, lose, or draw, this is the best kind of campaign to do. It is also the most fun, as the folks in Woodland found out. Because working with people who are dedicated to doing something which is for the general good is an easy thing to rally. And here we are in a church. How do you build fellowship in the Methodist church?
Food.
Food.
Oh, the Methodist.
Food. We had barbecues when we were fighting one campaign that Jimmy Jordan would put together, and I made it to all those, and that was 2.5 hours from where I lived at, but we were working in Richmond County in North Carolina, and I made it to Jimmy's barbecues as often as I could. Now, when they would do a demonstration in Richmond County, this was a whole different issue, nuclear waste dump. And Jimmy had bad diabetes, and so he did have an artificial leg, which he could walk around. He could do pretty well. He could turn that barbecue. But when the demonstration time came to be out in front of the county courthouse, took off his leg, got his wheelchair out. He knew the theater of a public campaign. We have to be right on the facts. We have to be right on the law. We have to know what we're talking about. But there is a larger stage of public opinion. And so, acting as if you're going to win, doing things which draw people to you, not always handing them a piece of paper which, it looks like a list of contaminants. I mean, how do you get somebody interested in a fact sheet with a list of contaminants on it? Some people that works, but not everybody. People are busy. They got Little League and soccer and ballet class and whatnot. I mean, people don't have time for a lot of stuff. But people who don't have time for that stuff may have time to do the cover dish supper. My wife Janet, who organized Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, pulled a switcheroo one time because we were working in a group that was trying to fight a toxic facility. It was an asphalt plant in a community next to a school. And so we said, okay, we need a research committee. Okay, hands went up. We need a publicity committee. Okay, a membership committee. All those were filled. And then she said, fundraising committee. Nobody put their hands up. Nobody wanted to raise money. And she said, well, what's the first fundraiser going to be? Cover dish supper. Food committee. Who wants to be on the food committee? Hands went up. Be smart. And people that couldn't deal with parts per million of whatever air pollutant it was, certainly knew how to cook cornbread and do whatever else that needed to be done, and to bring people in. Fundraising. Another friend of mine said you just leave off the D and call it fundraising. High school students, band clubs know how to do this stuff. You've seen them. You drive down the road this time of year, and they're trying to raise money for band uniforms, and there's a car wash maybe out in the parking lot by the Walmart or wherever. They'll do a car wash. How many of you drive past? How many of you can bear to drive past and not give them $10 no matter how clean your car is? I'm a sucker for those kids. They're doing work. I mean, I did it with my own girls when they were, doing that stuff. So, yard sales. It's springtime coming up here today. There was red buds and dogwoods and everything along Highway 220. Yard sales. My granddaughter and I, we went to 7 yard sales in one day. When I took her away from the rest of the family, they were having some kind of it was a wedding shower, actually. It was not suitable for a 7-year-old girl. So I said, Maddie, come on. We didn't get a quarter mile before we spotted a yard sale. We hit 7 yard sales that day, and we had a competition. And Maddie'd say, "Oh, look, Granddaddy, there's a yard sale up there." And we pulled in there. We spent $5 that day. It was the best $5 I ever spent. We came home with a satchel full of stuff. Yard sales. Do yard sales. People that can't come to our meeting here tonight for whatever reason can do a yard sale. Doing those kinds of things for Preserve Franklin in this case, or any other committee that we're working on, helps to build outreach, brings in some money, because you got to have money to do a campaign like this. I mean, even at 10 cents a page, you got somebody. But organizing. That's why Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League has 7 people on staff. All of us are community organizers, you and me. That's why I'm here tonight. Are there any questions from anybody here tonight?
A question with regard to what we talked about earlier, about the emissions that are generated by the compressor stations. Now, with a 300-mile pipeline, are these stations intermittently spaced, or how many would be in place if the pipeline is completed?
Good question. How many and how far apart are the compressor stations along the pipeline? It varies from as little as 40 miles and as much as 100 miles. The Sable Trail one in Georgia is like 100 miles apart, and the ones that are slated for the Mountain Valley Pipeline are much closer together, and I forget the exact number. 4?
75 miles apart, more or less.
So there will be 4.
4. And I think one of them is on the edge of Roanoke, isn't it? Roanoke Canyon.
Roanoke, Montgomery.
So those figures you showed would be multiplied by 4 just for that pipeline.
At least 4, because they're saying 4, and I don't know if they can do it with 4. Maybe they can, but that's what they're saying right now. So yeah, at least 4.
Do we know all of those 4 locations or just one of those?
I think the one that I know about for Mountain Valley is in Virginia. The rest of them are in West Virginia. Right, Laurie? Yeah.
Follow-up question too. It is based on the figures that I've seen, West Virginia stands to gain the most from this project in terms of revenue. Virginia is somewhere down the line as far as numbers go. How can the governor, for example, justify claiming that we're going to have X amount of temporary jobs, which practically all of them would be temporary from what I gather, and we would gain X amount of dollars of revenue in face of the damage that is being done for, I don't know how many miles it runs through Virginia. How can it be justified?
How does the governor, in your case, McAuliffe, justify the economics of the pipeline in terms of being in favor of it, which he is and has said so? I think it's specious. I think it's based on false economics. And one of the things that we're doing is looking at those numbers. Because when we've taken a hard look at things like that, there's a lot of assumptions that go in to a prospective project. And if you're a businessman or a businesswoman, you make your best case if you're going to the bank to get a loan.
Sure.
That's similar to what is happening here. The company is making its best case, in this case for the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission or to the state agencies or to the governor, and making promises which it's a check that cannot be cashed.
The one entity that stands to gain the most out of this is the corporation that will be responsible for the Mountain Valley Pipeline.
EQT and Xterra.
Yeah. Everybody else is kind of left by the wayside.
The promises of jobs come along with, our natural gas provision, and most of the people, since you've been to meetings, probably know that it's very high pressure, which is required to operate these 32 or 44-inch large natural gas pipelines, and it runs at high pressure. You can't tap it. If you build a factory next to it, you can't tap into that gas without having it step down, and that requires an intermediary like a local power commission or another utility to step it down and provide the gas. And so there's a middleman involved there, and it doesn't happen just because you and 15 other people invite BMW into the community.
The most important upcoming event is the Board of Supervisors meeting. That is on Tuesday, April 21st. It is at 1:30 in the afternoon. It's a horrible time of day, I know, for most people who work, but that's when they have their meeting. And that's when Steve Waterman will be speaking on public safety concerns. He's been doing a lot of research. So be there if you can. Bring your kids if you want to bring your kids. That would be great. I drag my kids when I can too.
And it's quick, right? So it's not
short.
going to take
It's
all your time.
they get allowed 3 minutes for us to speak, and they only allow one person on one topic each month.
Where?
It's at the Government Complex Building, which is, how do you explain where that is? Off 40 West.
The old Winn-Dixie.
It's the old Winn-Dixie. I did not live here, but I was in Dixie. I'm sorry?
Make a Facebook event?
It is. I think it's already.
Yeah, it
an
is.
event, a
It is,
Facebook
Natasha.
event? Yeah, I think it's already a Facebook event on the Preserve Franklin.
Yeah, but it's a closed thing, so you can't even share that
Okay,
event.
we need to change it.
Yeah.
She's been making
Yeah.
them private somehow.
Stand up at the Board of Supervisors and hammer this. I can tell you about another situation that I did, and it was eliminated from Roanoke County.
Okay.
But do that, you have to just hammer it.
Right.
Repetition is
Yeah.
a great teacher.
Yep, we've been going every
They just want
month.
you to go away.
Yep. We have a couple other events we're going to be at Earth Day Roanoke, or sorry, not Earth Day Roanoke. Earth Day at Franklin County High School. We've got folks going volunteering for that. The next thing though really is come to the Board of Supervisors meeting. We also are working on a festival fundraiser, a fundraiser, and yeah, it's going to be really exciting. We have bands already lined up. It's going to be a music festival, and potentially it's going to be at our farm. We're hoping it is, but we're working on insurance and making sure we're covering our bases there. So look for that. We are planning, we're needing volunteers for all kinds of areas, especially if we're going to look into this economic impact study, which I think we all learned tonight. That's something we really need to consider doing. So we need donations, jars out there, we need volunteers, sign-up sheets out there. If you did not get to sign in when you came in and you're not getting our emails, make sure you hit the sheet, jot down your email, because we will send out these dates that we're talking about. I'm not even reading through. There's so many opportunities to get involved through our group and the other groups that are working together. So I'm not going to read through the list. The best thing is just get connected with us, Facebook, email, and that's it. Thank you for being here. I know it's there is the letter writing kit. I have a lot of things here. So there's a letter writing toolkit that Jenny Chapman helped put together. It's wonderful. It even has an envelope and labels. All you have to do is have a stamp and a pen and paper, and you're good to go. There's tips, there's sample letters. So if you want something to do, take this. It is available too. We can get you more copies of them. We have about 20 or so out on the table. So take one of these. It has addresses. Do you have?
Yes. I didn't want to interrupt you all because I'm not from Franklin County. I'm from West Roanoke County. And about 3 hours ago, I decided to drive down here, and so I did. And the same thing is going on in Roanoke County. And Roanoke County Board of Supervisors, who I'm very familiar with, and sometimes they don't like me showing up, but anyway, they have a resolution against the pipeline. They've been disrespected by the officials of the pipeline. They don't like that, so they set up a resolution against it. Okay, and I didn't prepare a statement. I just scribbled down some stuff while Lou was talking. I've been a citizen activist since the 60s. FBI has called my parents, SBI has called me, and so, I'm familiar with citizen activism. And to give you some encouragement, I won't take too long.
You're welcome to come up here. Would you like to?
Well, I can, whatever.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Introduce yourself, sir,
Yes,
because
ma'am.
I'm from Roanoke, and I don't recognize you, and I know these people don't. Introduce
I
yourself.
think I've seen you. I'm Noah Tickle, and I'm from West Roanoke County. You may have seen some of my comments on the Mountain Valley Pipeline,
Gotcha.
and I think I made a comment or two on some of this other stuff. And this is a good thing to do, and we should thank Lou for being here. But so some of the things, and I'm going to be as brief as I can, some of the things I wanted to say that I actually know about this. I seen somewhere somebody said this pipeline is going to be about this big. I think it said 3 foot or whatever. Well, and it's supposed to have 3,000 pounds pressure. Now you can't imagine how tremendous that is. One of my specialties with my employer was hydraulics. And you can't imagine what kind of pressure that is. And then the branch lines that people were talking about, some of them are 200 pounds pressure, and some of them are 1,700 pounds pressure. It's going to vary. And if these things go off, it's going to be tremendous. Like Lou mentioned, one went off, and a 40-story high crater or whatever it was, a huge crater. What's that going to do to the groundwater? In Roanoke County, one of the maps I looked at, this Mountain Valley Pipeline is going to go in the watershed of Poor Mountain. Between that and the Spring Hollow Reservoir, which serves water to the whole area down in there, it's one of the water sources. And one of the engineers is one of my friends. And if that goes off, there, what's that, that's got, they're going to shut the water off to the Roanoke Valley, so to speak. And one of the things in Roanoke County we've done is, Lou mentioned an asphalt plant. Well, they were going to put, I forget who the contractor's name is, but they were going to put a asphalt plant near a retirement community and a highly dense neighborhood in West Roanoke County. Going to put it all in there, and a lot of people a lot of us got involved in it. And there was also Glenver High School's nearby. Well, they stopped it, and then they moved it out in the very western, right on the boundary line of Roanoke County, near Montgomery County line. And so, that it was more of a rural-like area, and it's really hasn't caused any problem. But if we don't stand up, if we don't show up, nothing's going to happen. And all of this stuff about jobs and stuff, that's just bogus. Forget that. Economic benefit, forget that. This is all deception to put in their bureaucratic grab for money. And I'm off of the railroad 41 years, early retired 10. And why would a pipeline ever be built when the railroad tank car pipeline, I call it, has been in existence for 155 years with little to no pressure in the tanks? It's been in use for 155 years. Why would we allow bureaucrats to keep duplicating, to do the money grab, to constantly be doing these things? And we're just sitting around like a bunch of sheep and letting it happen. This is more about your rights, your grace of God-given, unalienable rights. You have property rights. It's right in the bottom of the Fifth Amendment. Read it. Read your Constitution. It's in the bottom of the Fifth Amendment, and you have rights. This is a 5,000-year leap that we're involved in. This didn't happen overnight. This right of property has been going on for longer than that, actually, but it's the part that we know about. You have rights. Your body is your property. Everything on the outside of your skin and all the way in is your property. It's not supposed to be ever violated. You have land. That's not supposed to be violated. And any time that it is, it's unconstitutional. So get familiar with this, and you need to know those things. And I liked what Lou said a minute ago. He said, do something. He was involved in a sentence statement he made. But I'm always preaching that. Do something. You know, don't just sit there. Do something. And I think these people here will be doing something, but get more people involved. And go to your board of supervisors meetings. I've been doing that since I retired, especially. I was doing that before, and liberty is not about money. Liberty is preserving your rights. The rights in the Constitution, we really don't have any rights in the Constitution. The Bill of Rights attempts to put out something that actually says the government is not allowed to tread on our rights, but they do it constantly because we let them. We're the sovereigns. What we call the federal government exists in three parts. It's first the sovereign, we the people. We're the sovereigns. And next comes the states. And lastly, and least of all, our creature, as Thomas Jefferson said, is the central government. It's a servant. Their duties are few and completely well defined, but yet they ignore all of that and tread all over us constantly. Do not allow this to happen. You've got to be there, you've got to stand up, you've got to do something. And we've done some stuff in Roanoke County that we thought would never be able to get done. And so it is doable. Like, for instance, my friends up on Bent Mountain, when we had the wind turbine issue, and I'm very familiar with those with any kind of generators and alternators and things like that, because that's what your railroad is now. They stood against that, and a lot of us did with them, and so they got a lawsuit against the Roanoke County government. Well, when that happened, the wind turbine people disappeared, just like Lou was talking about. And so all you have to do is do things, and you all will find a way. And I'm sure Roanoke County people will all work together on this, and everybody's opposed to it. I've been to pipeline things down in Giles County. Same thing, signs everywhere. So keep doing this, because it's very important for our rights, our God-given, grace of God-given, unalienable rights. Our rights come from God. It doesn't come from government. Don't let them hijack that. So, but anyway, that's very important. And I've made a lot of statements on the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Check those out. And because we don't really have time here to go into all that. But also I'll make a few comments on some of your all's situation.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So here's a couple things you can do. Okay. Next meeting flyers. Take some of these to hand out. It's May 14th.
Which it already is empowered to do in the state of Virginia. For example, municipal governments are enabled and in fact have to protect their residents from nuisance. So they're empowered to do things to protect nuisance. There's also words in your state constitution which shall be the Commonwealth policy to protect its atmosphere, lands, waters from pollution, impairment, destruction for the benefit, enjoyment, and general welfare of the people of the Commonwealth. This is the founding documents of not only the state legislature, but the political subdivisions, which are the counties. What we are saying is that there are many avenues open to counties, and you'll see them in other counties. Maybe they're hiring their own economists to do some of the number crunching that you just asked, the people we just talked about, and which would be a whole different set of assumptions than what EQT and NextEra are promoting. They can weigh in a variety of ways under the Clean Water Act the Federal Power Act, the Historic Preservation Act, Full Disclosure Act, Endangered Species Act. There's many things that a county can do that are well within federal and state law, and that's what we mean by a community veto. It won't happen, though, unless you ask for it and make it politically intolerable for them to do anything but put up some resistance to the company. Imagine this. Imagine Franklin County, Roanoke County, Floyd County, every county all the way down to Pittsylvania County, where we have a chapter, putting up some kind of resolution or working on an environmental impact statement or doing its own analysis against the pipeline. What kind of a message would that send to the folks in Philadelphia, which is EQT's home base?
We need solidarity.
What would that do? The company would see that they're not welcome. That's what happened with Thermal County. The one I told you about wanted to build a hazardous waste incinerator. But it wasn't a legal case that chased them out of North Carolina. It was the public opinion building against it. So that's why I'm ready. I've got enough of these to hand out to everyone. Maybe somebody can hand those out to everyone.
I have a question
Yes.
or a comment. I am one of those mothers who's too busy changing diapers to be fully immersed in this conversation. This is really the first time I've participated. And I am in communication with my neighbors and my friends, other young families, people of various ages, and not many people that I know are talking about this unless it impacts their land.
Yes.
And so I wonder, how do we begin to get more of our community members informed, invested, if it's not happening in their literal backyard? Whether or not they decide to be pro or anti, I just want people to be involved so that as a community we can make a decision. So I wonder, how do we begin to get more people in our county talking about it? Because it's not happening in my group of friends and in my neighborhood.
Well, we're dealing with the backyard of all of us.
It's just going to have to be.
So finding the message, a lot of it is about message. So what are the things that will resonate? Sense of fairness. That's why, what's happening on the Riley's farm, I think, is a turning point. Because people understand trespass that aren't quite bought into the fact that natural gas is a bad idea, and don't believe that solar power and wind energy are going to get us out of this problem. So we can't do it with just folks that want to see wind turbines and solar power. We need more people. So that's why. I mean, we're talking about safeguarding America's resources. We're talking about a message which can appeal to a person's sense of fairness. And getting the word out, I mean, I think Facebook is well and good, and social media are all good, but do not neglect the mass media. Electronic media are largely free, but for a relatively small amount of money, you can put an ad on the radio station. If you've got a radio station in Franklin County,
We're working on that.
Yeah, we're in the middle of doing that, actually.
They sell ads.
Yes, they do.
we have used that means to put this on the agenda and put this into the ears of a large number of people with a 30-second spot. So we can help you write that spot. Franklin can write that spot. We can raise a few $100s, and we can put some ads on the radio. Or maybe buy a display ad in the newspaper. People read the newspaper, otherwise it wouldn't be there. Maybe you don't read the newspaper. Maybe you don't listen to the radio station and the farm reports, but a swap shop. Actually, I do. But a lot of people do. So you reach a whole new segment of the audience, and it might be some of your neighbors, for example. So there's ways to do that.
I think think another way that we want to explore, and Mike Carter was gracious enough to bring a list, is of community organizations that we can go to and have people from the community go and speak, just to bring awareness. Whether it's what you've learned, what you're experiencing, whether you're a landowner or not, but visiting like Rotary Club, or there's Junior League or Women's League, and there's a lot out of the lake area, and that's, Mike has an extensive list that as a community we need to consider who can we rise up to send to go, to go teach, go share, get it out there, and not give up on that. And another thing is even just churches, communities, somehow making connections through any churches that people might attend, or in bulletins or newsletters, just general information. Getting people to come to the meetings is important too, because this is where we learn and where we meet each other and see face to face and share our stories and make connections. So that's really important.
Scripture calls upon us to be good stewards. On the staff, I mentioned the 7 staff that we have. 2 of them are ministers. One a Seventh-day Adventist, another one a Baptist minister. And he says that the ministerial associations are a good way to go. So Reverend, Charles, our staffer, will oftentimes go to the meetings of the bishops or whatever group of overarching group of the churches get together to talk about policy. And it's been pivotal to the work that he's done in Georgia, in this case, because that's where he lives, and reach out to people who are not getting the message yet. They just need to hear it. Maybe they'll hear it on Sunday morning. There's community time in some churches where you can get up and you can say, a couple, 3 minutes about we're doing something to stop the pipeline, please come help us. So that community time, not every church has it, but many of them do, at least the ones that I've been to that have that, we've made use of it. Or, like I say, put the message in the format. Maybe it would be along the lines of Reverend Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who's won a Nobel Prize. He's South African, helped end apartheid in South Africa. Back in September, I think it was, he was at the UN, and he made a statement which was unequivocal about global warming. And while not everyone in the audience may agree about global warming, at least Bishop Tutu was quite clear in that the charge that he sees as a religious man calls upon him to spread the word that we need to do something because low-lying areas of the world, the seas are rising, and that we need to do something for the least of us before it's too late. So that's a message that maybe the bishops might hear. Another message for the county or for the economists would be the financial message we were talking about. Some people care about the money, don't care about the other stuff. So we have many messages here. And the simpler they are, and the more direct they affect that person, either from a spiritual point of view, or an intellectual point of view, or a pocketbook issue. You're talking to people where they live. We don't have to convince people that solar energy and wind energy is necessary to do this. What we do need to do is stop the pipeline. And that comes back to making the supervisors in this county, your county, and other counties as well in West Virginia and elsewhere, listen to the population. That job is still to be done.
Yeah. And the first job is just to educate the public, because I've talked to people randomly that have no idea, they think a pipeline is going to be this big, and, so they don't really have any facts, and I'm still learning as I go, but, we have a table set up at the farmer's market on Saturdays so people can, be, in a public area and actually see it, but even like at the Harvester, we were there the other night, and I was thinking, I wish all these people had access to just facts, just pure education, I think, would help, because people really just don't know.
Well, we've discussed putting out like information tables or information at businesses. So if people have connections or you own a business, would you be glad to give information in Franklin County or anything like that? I mean, we have materials, we can print materials. We are definitely working.
Yeah, recently I worked with Judy and Jenny, and we worked out a single page sheet, had a really nice photograph of the pipeline. And I just made 30 copies and went around my neighborhood knocking on doors. And
Yeah, see, I would love to get 100 copies,
I never met a
you know?
single person who didn't say, gee, thanks for doing that. I had no idea. People right there just within the doors, you know, of the house.
Wanted to know how could we tell our neighbors.
Jenny was wonderful, and it was approved by Judy and Natasha. And so it's just one page, it's really succinct, but it's got all those website references on there. It's kind of eye-catching. Jenny Chapman has it.
Right.
Just print it off and copy it.
Yeah, we've uploaded
It's
files to the
on the
Facebook,
website, okay.
or on the Facebook or the website. So
Okay.
there's certain files
And I-
available to download.
That goes back to what Rachel was saying, like what can she do as a busy mom in her neighborhood and her friends? That would be perfect. Yeah.
And I actually got a roll of cheap tape, and if somebody wasn't at home, then I stuck that sucker right on the door.
Well, and I think that's what it's going to take is for us who actually care, we're here because we care, to go, to walk our neighborhoods and to take it to work. And, you know, I think that's where it starts. That's where it starts to grow is everybody I know, you know, just pass it out.
And now we
How
have
about a coloring book?
Yeah.
How about a coloring book?
Yeah.
Come up with an anti-pipeline coloring book, give them away for next to nothing, and put them in the hands of, I mean, kids love to color. My girls colored all the time until they ran out of crayons. Do a coloring book. Do a Preserve Franklin anti-pipeline coloring book.
Right.
And
And we did just get business cards in, so take a stack of these. This is easy. It has our website, and then it has Facebook, and it has what we are. Preserve Franklin is a group of concerned citizens taking a stand for landowner rights against the abuse of eminent domain by private companies and against the environmental and safety risk of gas pipelines. Join us. So this is easy. You don't have to do anything, just grab a stack and pass them out.
Awesome.
You have a stack of those? or something?
Yeah, they're out on the table. Yeah, I'm going to make several announcements where everybody goes. So whenever, but if there's any other questions.
okay, there's one burning question from the back, I can tell. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that, you know, especially to these young people up here that have all these young children, mothers care about the health of their families. Every mother cares about the health of their families. And even though it isn't going in their backyard, their air could be polluted, their water could be polluted, and they have got to care about keeping the environment healthy for their children to grow up in and even have grandchildren. And that, I think, really speaks to moms.
And
Because
so
it's going
for
to
me,
affect everybody. It's not just going
Right.
to affect those of us who are right next to it.
and I get that sense from the families that I am friends with, but then they need something easy that they can do because it's hard to come to a meeting. It's hard to volunteer.
They can write
Yes.
letters.
So writing a letter, calling Sherry, like those are the two
Sherry,
things,
yeah.
or walking your
Yeah.
neighborhood that I can see young
People
families
actually
actually doing.
Yep. Yep.
Any other questions? I've really enjoyed coming here tonight to talk to you. And I wish you every success. I look forward to coming back. I've been here before. Actually, several times, but before with Preserve Franklin. And they're a welcome addition to the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League and a real player in the pipeline campaign. So I welcome you all, and I look forward to coming back.
Thank you.
with the get a business.
Saying that Franklin County is going to get some money, the county government, from this pipeline. Where is that money coming from if it's built, and what amount of money are they going to get from it?
Have you heard about this?
Well, it's been addressed in different ways. You probably can answer better than I can.
According to Mountain Valley Pipeline, they pay an estimated $2 million a year to Franklin County. And the source of that, I presume, would be ad valorem tax for the added value of the equipment that goes through, or the pipeline. And I suppose some utility tax for the gas that flows through, but I don't know the total economics. But $2 million is what Mountain Valley reports on their website.
That's ridiculous.
Franklin County, and we asked the county last time, and they said, well, is that going to cover the public safety cost if we have an explosion on one of these mountains that burns down people's homes and blocks them from getting out, that blocks emergency vehicles from getting in? Those are the sort of questions I have, public safety.
All right, good, Jay.
So they're collecting about $2 million in taxes, in tax revenue. Did I understand that? It's like $2 million in tax revenue that the Franklin County gets to collect?
Correct.
Is that?
Right.
Which, keep in mind, would be used to offset all the devalued properties. And then, which affects those who, even if it's not on their land, it will affect their value too. So then it will raise up other people's property taxes to offset the ones who have devalued. So part of that was eventually would probably be used for balancing it all. You know.
Right.
So it could be a wash.
Right.
Which you're losing property taxes being made up by some other form of taxes, and it's on the backs of the landowner. Dave?
Yeah, let me just mention that we're talking about activism tonight. So
Come up here and use the mic, Dad. Come use the mic. Sorry, that's my dad. I get so much news. So I can hear you better.
Okay. Thanks. So we're talking about activism tonight, and one of the things that was put on the Preserve Franklin Facebook page is to take action by calling Sharon Tudor, okay? She's the secretary of the Board of Supervisors here in this county, and ask her to tell them we want a public hearing. Because that's the opportunity to say, you show us the economics are coming into Franklin County that will justify this. You show us how you're going to protect us, provide public safety if we have an explosion on one of the mountains or under a road or a river, wherever it might be. Those are the sort of questions I want the Board of Supervisors to answer. And so I've already called Sharon and said, wrote to her and I said, I want a public hearing, but you all need to do that.
I called her yesterday. She's taken names and phone numbers of enlisting everybody that calls. So, and she's very sweet. So she's.
Oh, she's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her phone number. Do you want her phone number?
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yes.
It's 483-3032. I haven't memorized. 3032. 483-3032. She is super nice. She wants to hear from us.
And she's concerned.
She wants to hear.
If I live in Duxburg, Virginia, it's still appropriate to call. That's in Carroll County.
Right. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, you could still call, but she certainly, her biggest concern when I've spoken to her is she's happy if she can do something for one of the citizens of Franklin County. So, I mean, she understands her job is to help the people get through to the supervisors. So it's been great.
We might can ask a question. I think that's a good idea, and ask for a public hearing. And I know Laurie's got a question. But in addition to that, certainly, would be to generate our own analysis. If you will go to the website, which is on that slide behind me, and look at some of the reports that we have published over the years. For example, we did one last year after the Eden coal spill contaminated the Dan River. And did an analysis of it with footnoted references, and also proposed a alternative to dumping it in landfills, either carrying it to Virginia landfills in Amelia or other landfills in other states. And we released that in a press conference in the state capitol. It might serve more than one county to do an analysis. We could certainly take some facts and figures from Franklin County and maybe some other counties as well, and publish our own report and release that report. And that way the industry, the government, and maybe the governor would be forced to deal with some figures that are on our side. Because a lot of times, you know, the assumptions that go into a financial analysis, like a lot of analyses, help to determine the outcome. So they're taking a very favorable view, very favorable economic picture that they're painting when they talk about the economics. So let's get shed of all those favorable to the industry kind of assumptions, and then look at it, what it costs. Like Dave said, you know, what would the balance be in terms of loss of taxes? We've done this before. We've done that kind of analysis based on county figures, for example. When an industry came in, it was an asphalt plant and it expanded, and church next to the asphalt plant, its tax assessment valuation dropped 52%. All we had to do was go to the county board of adjustment, get the data from the board of adjustment, get the map that they had, which showed that the properties around the asphalt plant were devalued 52%, and then 43%, or however how much it was, and then the dollar figure, and how much the county took it in the neck in terms of assessed tax valuation. That was indisputable. That's still on our website. So there's economic analyses that we can do, and I think should do, which would help advance the campaign, and then put the other side on the defensive. Laurie, you had a question?
Sort of an ongoing question. It's a comment as well. In Monroe County in West Virginia, we started working on trying to get to the bottom of their tax base structure, whatever it is that they are claiming is going to produce such and such revenue. And a lot of this came out in their FTI report on December 10th, that it's insane. It makes no sense. We've had our county assessor work on this for months now. Different individuals. We've gone through every imaginable route to find some rhyme or reason about how they came up with their figures. We've talked to MVP repeatedly and actually did receive a formula at some point that it is something that reads like science fiction. It is beyond the pale. None of it is traceable, and we've talked a lot now about getting some kind of an economic analysis or an economist on board, because there's been no way to make sense of it, but they're saying basically the same figure from place to place. Same way they say, we've got 75% people who are allowing surveys. Well, it's just not true.
Right.
So, yeah, there has to be some kind of an economist involved in this. How do you get to the bottom of this?
Well, we can hire an economist, or we can do our own work. Never forgetting the fact that, at best, you're leveling the playing field with that kind of analysis. Because, you know, let's face it, EQT, NextEra have their bean counters, and they can argue until you're blue in the face that, no, actually the economics work out this way. But we have to answer that concern, because it comes up all the time. When we proposed our coal ash alternative, which was based on existing technologies, first people wanted to ask me was, which is big concrete drums basically for the coal ash on power plant property, not transporting it all over the place. They said, well, how much does that cost? Well, how much would you pay to not have another spill like Eden, or another one, the next one, who knows what it's going to be. But we're working on the economic analysis, and we've had some of our interns to work on it. But don't forget that there's always going to be he said, she said element to that. So it's important to do it, and I think you should do it. And in fact, I suggested doing it. But at best, it levels up the playing field. But it does, A, shore up our side of the argument. B, provides a reply, provides us some credibility in the general public, in the court of public opinion. Say, yeah, well, Blue Ridge and preserve Floyd and preserve Roanoke and preserve Franklin and everybody else know what they're talking about. They've got their own economic analysis, which is the one I choose to believe, and which we need to trumpet over and over and over and over again, because at this point, there's only a small fraction of people in Franklin County have heard anything about this.
Right.
I mean, tell me that the couple with small children are hanging on, what the next volley is from Nextera or EQT. I mean, it's just not a factor. And they're busy changing diapers. So there's a whole lot of people here that don't know first thing. That's the audience we need to reach. And we need to get them first. If we can't get to them first, we'll get to them second, which is okay, because if the other side is lying, then if we show the emperor has no clothes, then sometimes it's even better, a lesson unlearned. So that's where you're going with that. I think we do need to do that. And if it takes, if we could raise the money to get a professional economist, then I would say fine. I don't know if there's money for that now, but we can do our own analyses that may serve the same purpose and work towards that kind of a thing. Maybe there's somebody out there who would help us. Maybe, we're in touch with people all over the country. I just met an attorney from, he's in Denver, that's working with a group that we have and that we're working with in Mississippi. And so we got to talking about this, and he knows a bunch of stuff about pipelines, because Colorado is kind of like, central area for fracking for many years, and pipelines, they've dealt with it. And so he's been telling me about people there. So maybe through that kind of outreach, we can find somebody who would help do it.
So how does your organization look? I guess I'm thinking, are we to employ your organization to help us to do this, or are you, is this a nonprofit organization?
Blue Ridge is a nonprofit organization. Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League was founded, even though it was a church, women's committee at Church of the Holy Spirit in Glendale Springs, where the first meeting was, and but within a matter of months it became a secular organization under IRS Chapter 501c3, which means that we don't have to pay taxes on the money that we raise. And it was a great benefit, because otherwise it costs money to wage a campaign. So it wasn't all on one person. Plus it opens the door to foundations, private foundations, and also people who of means who can write a check for $100 or $500 can get a tax exemption for that amount of money. So it works for everybody's benefit. So that's the way we've always worked. And all of our chapters, including Preserve Franklin, operate as mini nonprofits. So the chapters have their own accounts in their own banks, under their own signature, treasurer. They simply operate under the same nonprofit rules. And so it is truly a league, it is a coalition already of community groups working on no fracking, no pipelines, no exports, no coal ash, clean energy, safe communities, and more. So it is people just like you in all those places operating as a nonprofit. So no, there's no money in this for us. We do have 7 people on staff, and we're seeking to expand that in the near future if we can, because the work is more work than we can do, more answers, more people calling than we can help at this point. Did that answer your question? So feel free to donate to Blue Ridge or to Preserve Franklin. Before you leave here tonight, membership in Blue Ridge is $20 a year. I have to say it's a steal. And plus, I hope you will, hand a check or some folding money over to Carolyn here on your way out the door.
There's jars out there.
Jar? Okay, you don't even have to touch your hands.
Right. And Dave, who's up here, is our treasurer, wherever he went. He's the
Right.
money man.
Make your checks payable to Preserve Franklin, please. Thank you.
We would love to donate, except our assets just dropped by 30%.
No, it hasn't. It has not. It's not going to happen.
Consider this an investment then. Your property values go down.
I understand this is just a transit pipeline, so Franklin County won't even have access to natural gas, so nobody is going to be able to, like businesses, homeowners, it's not even accessible, is that correct?
Transit pipeline, high pressure, yes, that's exactly what Mountain Valley Pipeline is.
So it's just going through.
Right, so you can't tap into it and heat your barn.
That's where the Board of Supervisors differ in that, or they have been told by Mountain Valley Pipeline that they could build in a tap if someone, it costs, I think it's $50,000 just to like have a place where they can make a connection, but it would require a business or the county entering the power natural gas business. So they would have to then build a, not a compression station, but a distribution station, thank you, escaped me. And that's millions, of dollars. So who has that here? And how then do you get the gas to the businesses or the landowners? I mean, it's just too spread out, and our population just doesn't demand it.
They could spend that $2 million a year on that.
Right. Yeah, so, but it's pipe dreams.
Right.
Literally,
Right.
I will tell you, Carolyn brought up a good point. I made a post on Facebook about Preserve Franklin County, and I got a message on my Facebook page from Rick Huff. And the post basically said we were not going to get any benefit from that. And he said to me, I really don't want to make a public comment, but I wanted you to see that a tap onto the pipeline has been guaranteed for Franklin County if needed for economic development. It doesn't change the property rights, environmental concerns, but there will be a benefit to the county if it gets built. And that was his comment to me.
So much to say.
But that benefit is going to be paid for by the taxpayers today, not 10 or 20 years from now.
That's right.
Somebody's got to build that decompression system, that distribution system, the buildings. And Franklin County supervisors are looking at the aspect of putting this into their industrial area.
Right.
Well, we, the people, are going to pay for that now. It isn't something that's going to be put off and be paid for by these industries because they're not there yet. And usually when these industries come in, they have tax incentives where they're tax-free for like 3 years, 5 years, 8 years. And in some cases, after that time period is up, they move out.
They couldn't attract an industry when the economy was booming here. I don't know what they think they're going to attract now.
Who's the person that responded to your query?
The county administrator.
How did he do it? She do it?
In a private message on Facebook.
Oh, well, of course, that's legally valid, isn't it?
Didn't he just quit?
Nail down. I would nail this down. A posting on a Facebook page, I'm sorry, doesn't pass the laugh test. And if it were true, it's not the proper means for anybody, certainly a taxpayer in a given polity, to base a decision which affects your property values, your county, and your livelihoods for the next, for the foreseeable future. So a posting on Facebook, with all due respect, isn't worth the electrons.
Well, it was a private message. He went on to say, I commented back to him, I was told by another supervisor that there was no plans to tap onto that line at any time, and then his response was, I understand, but that's incorrect information, and he said, I'd be happy to talk with you further if you wish. And I didn't wish to talk with him any further.
Private communications can lead people astray. You know, what is said in private, which is what that is really, it's not a matter of public policy. It is not something. So that brings up, this is a good transition point, I think. There was an editorial in the Roanoke Times last Sunday, I think it was, which talked about community veto, which is something that we are promoting as a way to hold our county and municipal officials accountable. And the editor of that editorial in the Roanoke Times took a position which I think is wholly incorrect and totally misread what we are talking about. And he never called me before he wrote the editorial. So I called him on Monday morning. Came out on Sunday, I believe it was. Duncan Yancey, not Duncan, Yancey. And I said, could I write an op-ed? And so I'm working on an opinion editorial correcting, the things that he said. But I did bring a fact sheet with me here tonight, and the reason I did is not to win an argument, but it is to point out that the community veto is a viable strategy, and we are using it with the Safeguard America's Resources campaign, like I said, all over, on coal ash, on fracking, in pipelines in Georgia, in the Carolinas, and Virginia, because it is a way to, community veto is the lawful conduct of public bodies to safeguard the health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants within its boundaries. So there's nothing illegal involved with this. And those of you who have heard about the Dillon Rule and what that means for Virginia and whether you have home rule or not, I think are not persuasive arguments in terms of the county doing things.